My brother proposed to my fiancée to prove she loved him more than me, but it only proved that he has single-digit IQ, and my parents are on his side. Posted by you/equivalent_ladder 197. My 28M brother Mark, 26M, used to date my fiancée Jen, 26F, a year ago. They were only together for a month before he broke things off with her because he was bored of being in a relationship and never really wanted to settle down anyway. At the time they were dating, I was in a different state, so I had no idea he even had a girlfriend, and I didn't know who Jen was until I met her. Jen and I met at a bar when I moved back in October, and we hit it off really well. She was easily the most beautiful and intelligent woman I had ever met, and we met up a few more times before we made it official. Fast forward to December, and I finally brought her up to my family and suggested they meet her at Christmas. They knew I was in a relationship, but I'm not the most open about my personal life, so I kept details about her to a minimum until I knew how serious we really were. My parents asked to see pictures, and they started passing my phone around the dinner table. Mark saw it and blew up, calling me a crap-smelling brother for dating his ex-girlfriend and demanding that I break up with her. I refused. When I asked Jen about it, she confirmed they had dated and gave me the details about their breakup. It took a few weeks, but eventually, Mark stopped bringing up the fact that I was dating his ex, and I thought he was over it. On Jen's birthday this year, I took her out to a fancy dinner with both of our families and her closest friends, and I asked her to marry me. Mark flipped out again and caused a scene about me proposing to her, which my sisters and I immediately shut down. The incident happened this past weekend. Mark had been pretty quiet about the whole situation for the last 2 months. I didn't see him much and figured he had gone low contact with me, which I had no problem with. Then, he invited Jen and me to a family dinner at his apartment with our parents and sisters. I thought it was weird, but since our parents and sisters were also going, we agreed to attend. The dinner was nice, nothing too fancy, and we moved to the living room to talk. About 30 minutes into the conversation, Mark stood up and said he had an announcement. He gave a long speech about being happy to have his family around for his big moment, then got on one knee and pulled out a cheap ring while asking Jen to marry him. Jen was confused and obviously uncomfortable, demanding that he put the ring away and stand up. My dad tried to grab Mark, but I got to him first and punched him. I won't repeat most of what was said, mostly because I was too angry to listen, but he said something along the lines of wanting to show me that Jen wasn't really into me and just wanted to get back at him. Before things could get worse, my parents rushed me out and promised to talk to him. It's been a few days since it happened, and I'm still pissed off. I don't know what to do at this point. I'm scared Jen might have second thoughts about marrying me because of this. Any advice? Update 2 days later. First, I want to thank everyone for reading. It's been a busy weekend, so I haven't had the chance to reply to many people, but I appreciate all the feedback, even the criticisms. Now for the update, I called Mark and asked him to meet up with me at my place to talk. I told him I would prefer Jen to be there as well, but I was fine with it if he didn't want her around. He agreed to talk to both of us and showed up at my place around noon today. It was pretty quiet for a few minutes before I started the conversation. I apologized for not warning him that I would be proposing to Jen, and I also apologized for hitting him. He said it was whatever, but he appreciated the apology. I told him what Jen had said about their relationship and breakup when I asked her about it, and I asked him to confirm if it was true. I explained that his reactions throughout this whole situation have been extreme, and I wanted to make sure I wasn't misunderstanding their relationship or downplaying how serious they were. He confirmed that they only dated for a few weeks and that he broke up with her because he lost interest. Jen asked if he was acting like this because he still had feelings for her or regretted ending things. He said he could admit that he found her more attractive than when he last saw her, but there weren't any feelings or regrets. He said he just didn't like seeing a girl he dated, even if it was short-term, with his older brother, and as a man, I shouldn't have violated him by pursuing things with his ex. I reminded him that I had no idea they had dated, so it wasn't like I consciously did this knowing their history. He shrugged it off and said it didn't matter, I still should have broken it off. He was adamant that if the roles were reversed, he would have done the same thing, which I doubt. I asked him why he proposed to her if he didn't have any lingering feelings. To sum it up, he said he had been talking to one of his buddies who was around when Mark and Jen dated. The guy put the idea in his head that maybe Jen knew from the start that we were related and was doing this to get back at him, considering she had been hung up on him after they broke up. He and his friend thought it would be a good idea to test this theory, so Mark came up with the idea to propose and see if she would dump me for him. Jen asked him to elaborate on why he thought she was hung up on him, and he told her that he'd heard she was asking about him after the breakup and still hanging out at the places they used to go, so he thought it was a valid assumption. Then, when she randomly showed up with his brother, it affirmed his suspicions. Jen told him she had only asked about him once after the breakup and that she'd been hanging out at those places with friends even before they started dating, so she wasn't going to avoid them because of a breakup. She also said she was offended by the idea that she would stoop so low as to pursue me just to get back at him. He shrugged, gave her a half-hearted apology, but said she had to see it from his point of view. He asked her if she really didn't know, and she told him that she hadn't noticed the resemblance between us until we were in the same room, and since we act nothing alike, it never crossed her mind. He accepted that and said, "Okay." That pretty much wrapped up the conversation. Before he left, he told me I could take back his invite to the wedding because he couldn't bring himself to support our relationship, knowing he used to date her. I told him not to worry about it, as he was most likely going to be uninvited anyway. It's been a few hours since our talk, and I do feel better. My parents aren't too happy about him being uninvited, but they understood that it was a mutual decision and probably for the best. My sisters told me they knew he didn't have a good reason for being a jerk, and they don't blame me for not wanting him at the wedding. As of now, I'm going to limit contact with Mark, and I doubt he'll reach out to me anytime soon either. Second update 2 months later. It's been a while since I last posted, but a few things have happened since my last conversation with Mark. I've been low contact with Mark since then. I haven't called him, and he hasn't called me, and our only interactions have been in family settings. As it stands, my mom is now upset that Mark is still uninvited for my wedding. It started with a comment made during my younger sister Sophie's, 22F, birthday. Her boyfriend of about 4 years proposed to her at the end of the night, and we sat around talking about what she envisioned for her dream wedding. She talked a bit about wanting a destination wedding, her ideas for the cake and dress, and then said something like, "Teddy, I know Mark's banned from your wedding, but you won't care if he comes to mine, right?" I laughed it off and told her I couldn't get mad about her guest list even if I wanted to. My mom gave me this weird look and asked if Mark was still not invited to my wedding. I told her yes, and she got irritated. She said she thought I was joking and accused me of being unreasonable for going through with banning him since he's family. She accused me of holding a grudge just to be petty. I reminded her that Mark and I had agreed he wouldn't come, and I told her this wasn't the time to talk about my wedding since the day was about Sophie. I added that if she or Mark wanted to discuss my wedding, they could call me another time. Sophie also laid into my mom a bit for trying to make her special day about Mark, and my mom dropped the issue. For those of you wondering, Mark wasn't at Sophie's party because he apparently had to work and couldn't make it. A few days later, my mom stopped by my house and said she wanted to discuss my wedding. She asked me why I was so adamant about Mark not coming. She said I shouldn't be so insecure about Mark and Jen's previous relationship and that uninviting him was a step too far. I told her that Mark and I had mutually agreed he wouldn't come, and if he had a problem with it, he could talk to me himself. We got into an argument, and she said that if I wasn't going to re-invite Mark, she wouldn't be coming either because I was ostracizing her son. I shrugged and told her if that's what she wanted, she could toss her invite in the trash because I wouldn't beg her to be there. She asked if I would really be okay with her not attending, and I told her it wouldn't be the first time she missed one of my events because of Mark. She said I was being a prick for throwing her past mistakes in her face, and she stormed out. After that, I started getting messages and phone calls from her and a few family members, saying I was in the wrong and urging me to invite Mark just to keep the peace. Jen has also been getting messages from my mom, asking her to talk to me and get me to change my mind, but as far as I know, Jen hasn't been responding. So far, most of my mom's side of the family is standing in solidarity with her and not attending, while my dad and his side of the family, which is just my aunt, uncle, and their 2 kids, agree with me and are still coming. My sisters are also still coming to the wedding, and of course, Jen's family will be there too. I also talked to Mark about it and asked if he had a problem with not being invited. He said he had uninvited himself in the first place and didn't understand why everyone was making such a big deal, since he still doesn't want to go. He told me to leave him out of the fighting because he's not involved, and he said he'd tell my mom the same. As of now, I'm back to being low contact with my mom, but my dad and I are still on decent terms. I'm still deciding whether to re-invite my mom and her side of the family, if they change their minds about the boycott, but the chances are low, and I've told my dad this, which he understands. For now, Jan and I have started looking into downsizing the venue since the guest list is significantly smaller. Third update 3 weeks later. My mom is now uninvited from the wedding indefinitely. About 2 weeks after she decided not to come, she stopped by and said she wanted to clear the air and talk about everything. We agreed and invited her in to join us for dinner. Jen made her a plate of food, and I asked if she was still planning on not coming to the wedding. She said that while she wanted to attend, she couldn't get over me not inviting Mark because of a simple mistake. I reminded her that his simple mistake was proposing to my fiance while I was sitting less than 3 feet away from him, and she said it was just a joke. Jen then asked why she wanted to talk if she was still maintaining the same stance on Mark coming to the wedding. My mom said she wanted to talk to Jen and was hoping Jen would hear her out and convince me to invite Mark again. Apparently, she assumed I was at work and that she could catch Jen alone. Jen politely told her that while she understood her thought process, she wouldn't have had that conversation without me present since this involves my brother. My mom made a comment along the lines of Jen being spineless and unable to have a conversation without me thinking for her, which started a heated back and forth between the 3 of us. Eventually, Jen told her to leave. As Jen got up and walked towards the door, my mom followed, still screaming at her. By this point, she was yelling about Jen tearing our family apart. While Jen was unlocking the front door, my mom grabbed her by the hair and pulled her to the ground, still screaming. She hit Jen and tried to claw at her face, so I dragged my mom off of her and threw her outside. She banged on the door for a few minutes while I made sure Jen was okay, then she left and called both of us repeatedly. When I was sure Jen was alright, I texted my mom and told her not to bother reaching out again because we would never speak to her again. I called my dad and sisters to tell them what happened. My dad was surprised and tried to make excuses, saying she'd been stressed about the whole situation for a while. My sisters said they knew she'd snap eventually since she's always been a crazy B-word, and they offered to come over to make sure Jen was okay. I asked Jen if she wanted to press charges, but she declined, saying she just wanted to cut contact with my mom for good. I told her that part was obvious, but she should still talk to the police since she was physically assaulted. However, Jen doesn't want my mom to get arrested. Thankfully, my sisters and Jen's mom came by to comfort her, so she's doing okay. My mom is blocked on everything until Jen says otherwise. I genuinely don't know what to do now. Jen doesn't want to go to the police because she feels guilty about having my mom arrested over this, but my sisters and I want to convince her to file a report. At the very least, I'd want documentation in case something happens in the future. Profile post 2 days later. Some people have been asking questions about my mom and my decision not to be open with Jen about my relationship with my parents, so I figured I'd give some background on why things are so strained. Like some of you mentioned, Mark was the golden child. He was my mom's baby boy, and she didn't do much to hide it. My parents didn't spend much time with my sisters and me like normal parents do unless they had to, but they spent as much time with Mark as possible. They would take him shopping while we stayed with a sitter, or bring him home his favorite food and toys when they shopped alone. He usually got better things compared to the rest of us, like new, expensive clothes while ours were thrifted, or new toys just for him, whereas we had to share older toys with each other. If my sisters and I got gifts, they were for us to share, but my mom made it clear that Mark's things were only for him, and we weren't allowed to touch them. When Mark would screw up, I'd get punished for not being a good role model and for not showing him the proper way to behave. For example, when Mark went through a phase of breaking his toys, I got the beating because, according to my mom, he obviously learned the behavior from me. When he was 8, Mark got in trouble at school for trying to push a kid down the stairs. I was grounded for 2 weeks and told to apologize to the kid for not teaching my brother better. When I turned 13, I pushed my parents to start giving me an allowance. They agreed, as long as I did household chores like mowing the lawn, taking out the trash, raking leaves, etc. It was usually around $25 a week to help me start saving. Mark saw that I was getting money and begged my parents for an allowance too. Instead of making him work, $10 of my allowance was given to him each week because we were doing such a good job with our chores, which he never helped with. Whenever I asked him to pitch in, he'd tell me it wasn't his job to do chores, so why should he bother? It was around this time that I started really distancing myself from my brother. By the time I entered high school, we only talked to each other when we needed small favors or when we absolutely had to. I got my first job when I turned 17 because I wanted to finally get my own car and earn money that my parents couldn't force me to give to Mark. My oldest sister, Maggie, helped me open my own bank account and taught me how to properly budget and save my money. After all my hard work, I bought my first car at 18. When Mark got his license, my parents asked me to let him use my car to get around and for extra practice behind the wheel. Reluctantly, I agreed, and for a while, the arrangement worked fine. Mark used my car when I didn't need it and helped maintain it. However, when he expressed wanting my parents to buy him his own car, my mom came to me and told me I should give him my car because he needed it more. When I refused, she threatened to kick me out. We had a big fight that night, which ended with her giving Mark my car and taking me to transfer ownership to him within the next few days. Since I didn't have anywhere else to go at the time, I just sucked it up and signed it over. When I graduated high school, both of my parents skipped the ceremony because Mark didn't want to sit through a long event just to see me get a piece of paper, and my mom didn't want to leave him alone for the night. So, I only had the support of my sisters, along with my aunt and uncle, who wanted to take me out to celebrate. However, they ended up having to bring me home at my parents' request because they had made me dinner to make it up to me. The dinner, unfortunately, was something I couldn't eat because my mom had put shrimp and chicken on the same serving dish, and I'm allergic to shellfish. In my first year out of high school, I worked 2 jobs to buy myself another car, and at the start of the new school year, I moved away for college and cut contact with my parents. They, mostly my mom, tried to reach out for the first few months through social media and Sophie, but I never responded. I also told Sophie she'd be cut off too if she kept trying to connect us. When my mom couldn't get to me through Sophie, she tried going through my older sister Charlotte, and a few times through Maggie and Mark, until I threatened to file a restraining order for harassment. It was a bluff because I had no idea how to do it, but it managed to scare her off. After that, the most I received from her were occasional happy holidays texts over the years. Around the time I moved back, Charlotte told me that they had been seeing a family therapist, at her request, and my parents wanted to apologize for how they treated us. I was hesitant, but I agreed as long as they were genuine, and the reconciliation process started when I moved back home. That doesn't even scratch the surface of everything they put me through, and it took a lot for me to even begin letting them back into my life. When I met Jen, I wasn't sure where my relationship with her was going or where things stood with my parents. I didn't want to mention my family at all, mostly because I was prepared to cut contact again if needed. Jen was understanding that it was a sore subject and didn't press for more details. I hope this helps shed some light on some of the questions I've been seeing pop up. 4th update 17 days later. I want to thank everyone who's taken the time to give me advice on what to do going forward, as well as all the kind messages and comments I've received over the past few days/weeks. Jan and I have read the comments together, and we appreciate everything. To answer the most common question about why I chose to reconnect after everything, the short answer is that I would do anything for my sisters. Charlotte wanted the entire family around for the birth of her first child and to help her adjust. She didn't want part-time aunts and uncles who would only visit her kid during birthdays and holidays. She was never the type to ask for much of anything growing up, so when she asked if I would be willing to try for her, I agreed because it would make her happy. I also think part of me hoped that maybe my parents had changed. I don't regret trying to reconcile, either. My parents are still terrible, but I met the love of my life, so I call it a win. A few people wanted to know if there's an update, so here we go. Sorry if it's a bit messy or confusing, a lot has happened. We filed a report with the police and were told that, even though Jen doesn't want to pursue anything, it's not up to us to decide whether it goes further, though they would keep our preference in mind. We provided solid evidence of the assault, including pictures of Jen's face and texts between my mom and dad about what happened. We were advised to report and document any future incidents involving my mom, in case anything else happens. Considering where we live, I doubt it'll go anywhere, but at least it's on record. I received about 100 angry text messages from my mom, which tells me they at least spoke to her about the incident. My mom tried to corner me as I was leaving work and screamed at me about trying to ruin her life. She kept yelling that I was an awful son for trying to get her arrested over a small misunderstanding and that she didn't understand what she'd done to deserve being punished like this. I told her that if she didn't want to be in legal trouble, she shouldn't have hit Jen. She demanded that I tell the police to drop the report, which I refused. I reminded her of what the officer said about it being out of my hands. She had a tantrum in the parking lot and hit me a few times, just on the chest and arm, before security intervened and escorted her off the property. I had to talk to my boss about the incident, but luckily, she was understanding after I explained everything that was going on. When I got home, I told Jen what happened. She was upset and asked that we discuss our plan for dealing with my family moving forward. It was a long talk, but we took the advice of some Redditors and decided to go completely no contact with my family, aside from my sisters. We agreed that having them in my life is adding unnecessary stress for both of us, and we aren't even married yet. Jen said she wanted to consider moving away to put some distance between us and my family. She explained that she had tried to stay out of my family issues because it wasn't her place, but she refuses to deal with my mom's behavior or my dad enabling her abuse any longer. A lot more was said, too much to include in this post, but I agreed with her that they were more trouble than they're worth, and I don't want to put up with this anymore either. I also agreed to start therapy, and Jen is helping me find a therapist. I decided to call my dad after our talk and let him know that I would be going no contact. He didn't answer the first time I called, so I left a message asking if we could have a long conversation. When he called back, he asked if it was okay for my mom to be part of the conversation. I told him it was fine, since she needed to hear what I had to say too. The conversation went about as well as you'd expect. I told them both that Jen and I are cutting them out of our lives. My dad demanded to know why I would do something like that after going through all the trouble of repairing our relationship. I explained that this whole situation with Mark has shown me that nothing is truly repaired between us, and as far as they're concerned, the world revolves solely around my mom and my little brother. I told them that their continued favoritism toward Mark has brought our relationship to a point of no return, and I wasn't interested in holding on to a failing relationship anymore. I explained that I agreed to reconcile for Charlotte's sake, but I don't appreciate all the disrespect toward Jen and me, and I won't put up with it anymore for both our sakes. To my mom specifically, I said I was tired of her using me as a scapegoat for her bad parenting and for Mark's attitude. I also told her that I would never forgive her for what she did to Jen, nor for what she did to me and my sisters growing up. She started to say that I should move on like my sisters have, but I cut her off and told her she should take their forgiveness and move on because she would never receive it from me, especially after everything she's done these past few weeks. She started crying and asked how I could treat her like such a villain. I told her that she could only be upset with herself because I've done nothing wrong. She cried harder and said she regretted having me and that I've only tried to ruin her life. This started a heated argument between my mom and Jen once again. Jen told her, in much more colorful words, that she was disgusting, along with plenty of other choice names, for saying something like that to me. I'm not sure if my mom left the room or just decided to stay quiet, but she stopped talking once Jen finished. My dad said he wasn't okay with being shut out of my life and asked me to try to understand my mom's point of view. He said she was also struggling because her kids were at odds, and I was being unfair by punishing her for her struggles with raising and caring for us. The last thing he said was that we were a family, and I shouldn't let past mistakes stop us from moving forward together. I told him that the only people my mom ever cared for were Mark and herself, and there was nothing he could say or do to change my mind. I told him it was up to him whether or not he kept my number, but I would be blocking both him and my mom everywhere, and I wouldn't be reaching out again. Then I hung up. Afterward, I sent a long email to my entire family, uninviting everyone except my aunt, uncle, and sisters from the wedding, with a link to my posts attached. I hadn't cried in a long time, but Jen held me while I cried after writing the email, reassuring me that we would be okay. My sisters also reached out to me after reading the email. I apologized to Charlotte for not being able to continue reconciling like she wanted, but she told me it was okay and that it's not my fault I had to cut them off again. The response from my family has been pretty mixed. Some are angry that I aired out family issues on a public internet forum, while others are upset with my parents because they never knew it was this bad. The last person I talked to about everything was Mark. He asked if I was cutting him off too, and I told him I wasn't, but I wouldn't be going out of my way to reach out to him either. He didn't argue and just wished me the best with the wedding, and we haven't spoken since. Right now, Jan and I are looking for a new place to stay. The plan is to move closer to Jen's brother, who lives about 3 hours from where we are now, and we both like the city he's in. I spoke to my boss about transferring, and Jan is looking into working 100% remotely or possibly finding a new job. Once again, our venue has changed. Since the guest list is significantly smaller, my future brother-in-law is considering letting us use his lake house for the wedding. I don't plan to post any more about this unless something drastic happens, at least not until the wedding, because I want to move on with life. Thanks, and happy holidays. Fifth update 10 months later. Hey everyone, it's been a while since I posted here. Things have been busy, but I saw a few requests for an update. It's small, but here it is. I have a wife and a newborn daughter now. We found out Jen was pregnant around the time of my last post, which pretty much kicked us into overdrive as far as moving away and starting fresh in a new place. I was able to transfer to a different location, and Jen found a new job that allows her to work remotely. We got married 4 months ago at her brother's lake house. We didn't plan to have the ceremony so soon, but we didn't want to wait for the baby to arrive before getting married. Jen also found a dress she fell in love with and didn't want to outgrow it. It was a small ceremony with mostly her family present, but my sisters, aunt, and uncle attended as well. I know some people probably expected to hear about a huge blowout at the wedding, but honestly, it was easily one of the best days of my life. My daughter was born early last month. She's beautiful, happy, and healthy, and Jen is doing well too. The last stretch of the pregnancy was hard on her, both emotionally and physically, but she's been doing much better since giving birth. She's seeing a doctor regularly during this postpartum phase due to complications she had during the pregnancy, but so far, there haven't been any major health concerns. Aside from complaining about the doctor visits, I don't think I've seen a frown on her face since we brought our daughter home. As for my parents, I haven't heard from my dad, but my mom did reach out a few days after the wedding. Apparently, my uncle sent them some of the photos taken at the wedding. My mom made a fake Facebook page and started spamming Jen and me with angry messages about being excluded from both the wedding and Jen's pregnancy. She went on a lengthy tirade about being entitled to be part of her grandchild's life and how unfair it was that she wasn't allowed to be present in our lives. She asked to visit us, demanded that we visit her, and even asked to be in the delivery room, all of which I quickly shut down. I screenshot everything and emailed it to myself in case I need it for a restraining order in the future, then I blocked her. I haven't heard from her since, but I know she's been harassing my sisters to get them to talk to us on her behalf. I don't know what, if anything, they're doing about it, but I made it clear that Jen and I have nothing to discuss with her. For everyone wondering if Mark and I have been in contact, the answer is yes. He called after we came back from our honeymoon to congratulate us on the wedding and the pregnancy. We had a long talk about everything that happened. I won't go into detail, but we both got to say a lot, and he offered both me and Jen what feels like a sincere apology for what he did. We've been texting a bit here and there since, mostly just small talk and life updates. He did invite me to have a drink with him the next time I'm in town. I don't know if I'll accept, but I told him I'd think about it. Thanks to everyone for the support and well wishes you've given us. Sorry if this update was a bit all over the place. Edit. Just to clear it up before anyone asks, Mark doesn't know where I live and likely won't know in the future. If he chooses to give updates about my life to my parents, that's his choice, but I won't give him any details that could help them show up unannounced. Unfortunately, even if we're able to form some sort of relationship, I'll never be able to fully trust him.